Thanks, Chris, and thanks, everyone. So we're going to be talking about mobile games today, and I am the developer of a game called QB Hero. Some people may have heard of it, some people may have not. It's a pretty simple game. We found some success with the game so far, but today we're just going to be going over a lot of methods of just creating games, monetizing games, how to get social proof for a game, and a lot of other things. If you have any dire questions during it or something's confusing or anything, feel free to raise your hand. I'll answer a question during it. And then if you want to ask questions at the end, that's fine as well. So a little bit of background about myself. So about 3 years ago, I started getting into apps, and really Flappy Bird is what did it for me, because I saw Flappy Bird. I remember walking into my dorm room, and one of my friends was like, "Yeah, I bet you can't get 10 on this game, and you can play 20 times." And I played 20 times, and I barely got 3 on the game. And that game just absolutely blew up. It has, millions and millions of downloads, and then the creator of it took it down, a whole entire other story. But that's when I really got interested in the App Store, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. This guy's making $50,000 a day off of this extremely simple game. And I got really interested in, okay, how is this possible? How can someone do this? How can someone replicate something like this? So from that point, I started watching the App Store for about 2 years. I looked at every single game. I looked at the top charts on the App Store. If you guys aren't familiar, that just goes over the top games, the top apps, whatever it is. There's like 150 apps in a ton of categories, and I studied what was going on behind each of those games. So I'd go on and be like, okay, why is this game number 5? Why is this game number 10? And then I'd go into analytical websites and I'd say, okay, what are they doing marketing wise? And I tried to look behind the scenes as to what exactly was happening with that game and why that game was becoming successful. And then about a year into it, I was like, all right, this is time. I need to start to prove my concept. So I taught myself Swift, not a pretty experience. I started in Objective-C and then had to switch over to Swift because it was right at the time where they were switching to Swift. Regardless, I taught myself Swift, and then I built QB Hero over last summer and marketed it in August. And that is how QB Hero was born. So QB Hero was released August 9th. This is just a video showing like the basics of the game. Some cool music. It's an extremely simple game. All you do is you throw a football to the receiver. You can change the items, the backgrounds, and you can win trophies and whatnot. When we first released the game had 30,000 downloads within 2 days. And on the third day, it was #1 trending search. And that was back on August 12th is when it was trending as #1 for the very first time. And that's when I was like, okay, I think something is going on here. Like I'm sort of starting to understand what's going on behind the scenes for the App Store. So far, overall, we've had 150,000 downloads. This is from about 3 different major marketing campaigns that I've done. We've trended on the App Store as #1 3 times. Every single time we've marketed, we've been #1. And then #4 sports game. We've had, technically 4.5 out of 5-star rating, but we have like almost 300 reviews, and the game has done very well. So far, it's been possible to prove what's happening. And what I want to do today is go over a lot of what I did wrong and how I would go in reverse and say, okay, this is what I would do if I was to start this all over. So if you're new into mobile games, or if you're thinking about getting into mobile games, you can figure out exactly how to be successful in the App Store, because I did a lot wrong. I'll also highlight some successes and whatnot. But I'm just going to give a baseline overview of everything that there is to really know about mobile games, the App Store, monetizing, and everything else. So let's just get started with it. To begin with, very first step would be creating a game. So like I said, I programmed this. I programmed it myself. I had to teach myself Swift. Honestly, it wasn't fun. I am a mechanical engineer, and it was a tough process to teach myself programming and go through it all. But you can code, and I think this is where a lot of people get detracted from making a game, because a lot of people don't know how to program. So people freak out, and they're like, okay, I don't want to make a game anymore because how am I going to program? Maybe I need to outsource. And outsourcing things it gets dangerous. I've dealt with outsourcing before. Right now, I'm actually outsourcing to Android version, and I barely get to speak with the guy. And I know a lot of instances where it goes wrong, because you're either, you're paying way too much money for a really good product, or you're not paying enough, and then the people you're working with aren't good enough. Overall, I'm not going to go too much into coding. You can make a game with coding. The biggest thing about coding is you're never going to have limitations with it. So I always suggest that if you can code, or if you can get someone to do in-house coding with you, go that route, because you're going to be able to make anything that you can imagine. But there is software now where you can make incredible high-quality games without even laying a finger on coding. And that's where these softwares like BuildBox and GameSalad come in play. So right now, BuildBox, which is the orange box you're seeing up there, this company started blowing up because this game, I don't know if anybody's heard of it, it's called Color Switch. It's been the #1 app in the App Store for, I think, 30 days. It just dropped, and they had over 30 million downloads in like 2 months now. It's unheard of what they're doing at the moment. This is like the next Flappy Bird type of thing. And the person that built this game built it in BuildBox. So now BuildBox is blowing up because, you know, oh, like he made it in BuildBox. This is a great game. So everyone should now download BuildBox. In reality, what's happening behind that is a huge marketing campaign that a lot of people don't really realize. So a lot of it doesn't even go into the game. It just goes into the marketing behind it. But you can make great games. There's been 23 games by BuildBox, not by BuildBox, by people that have used BuildBox that have been featured by Apple, which is unheard of. I think with every other gaming software combined, they could not match those 23 games in 1 year because it's nearly impossible to get that many features. GameSalad is another program that people have used. There's also things like Construct and Stencil. There's a lot of ways that you can use just a drag and drop software and make a great game. And these are, if you look at them, they really are high quality games. You can do some incredible things with them. This is where things get a little bit interesting. This is what I'm just getting into right now, actually. So something that has gotten very popular in mobile games and in apps is people are buying source codes. So these two sites, Sell My App and Chupa Mobile, I really don't know how to pronounce that, but whatever it's called, you can go on there and you can buy a source code for $100. So I could go and let's say I see, okay, Flappy Bird's down. Well, there's a Flappy Bird source code. I can buy that source code for $100. It's a great game. It's cross-platform. It'll play on Android. It'll play on iOS. It has all these ad networks already in it. It looks great to me because I don't really know how to program. And if someone's getting into the games and doesn't know how to program, it looks awesome because it's only $100. And they really help you with it. And then what I do after that is I could go and I could get it reskinned. So I would take that game, I'd take that app, and I'd go to a company that reskins it for like $400, let's say, which is a fairly reasonable price for reskinning. So I could take a Flappy Bird game, I could reskin it, and I could make it into a Donald Trump game. Right now, it would do really well because of the elections going on, and it is doing really well. There's a game right now called Trump Dump, which has been a top game for a few months now, and part of the reason is because they took advantage of this. They made a game exactly like Flappy Bird, something they knew would be successful because people love it. It's off the App Store technically, and they reskinned it to be a Donald Trump game for current events, and now it's doing extremely well. They're making loads of money off of it. So people are making businesses off of buying source codes, reskinning it, and just making these original apps that really aren't original at all, but to other people they seem original. If you go look through the App Store right now, and you look in arcade games, you'll probably see 3 exact Flappy Bird clones. And I remember a couple months ago, they came up, it was just Flappy Bird original, it's back, or Flappy Bird is back, or something like that. And it was a top game because they marketed it correctly, but all they did was buy a $100 source code, pay maybe a few $1,000s on marketing, and then they have their game blow up. So it's pretty incredible what you can do with these websites and with that drag and drop software without laying a finger on coding. You don't have to do coding at all. You can just buy into it, or you can just move things around with, like, you know, whatever you want to use, a touchscreen or whatnot, and just build a game by hand. There are a lot of ways. So if you are scared of coding or whatnot, you can get into it without actually coding. What comes next is actually releasing that game. So when you release a game, you're going to one of these app stores. You're either publishing to iOS, you're publishing to Google Play, Amazon App Store. There's a lot of them out there. The 2 main ones are Apple and Google Play. And these are the 2 app stores also that most people study, and they try to figure out a lot of things about so that they can try to beat them. Sort of what I'm trying to do with QB Hero and other games and all this information right now. But you're publishing to one of these app stores. That's not really the main thing about publishing. The main thing about publishing is that the name that you're publishing under. So Flappy Bird. This is, I'm sure everyone in this room recognizes this picture and probably has played the game and probably has gotten frustrated over this game. Flappy Bird was released as just an indie game developer. He published under his own name. That's how I published QB Hero. It's under my own name. Just like regular indie game developer. I didn't go the route of working with any company or anything like that. And you can go this route, and he did get really lucky. There's a lot of stories about what happened with Flappy Bird. Some people think that it got popular because he used like robots to rate the game and whatnot. Honestly, it just blew up. And then once Vine and all these other social media websites found out about Flappy Bird, they basically gave Flappy Bird free advertisements. Because I remember Vine there was hundreds of ads on Vine that seemed like they were advertisements. This was before people, if you do watch Vine and Instagram and whatnot, before people really posted ads on Vine. They just posted videos of them throwing their phone, breaking their phone, whatever, because they were mad about Flappy Bird. And then Flappy Bird went crazy, had millions of downloads, was making, like I said, $50,000 a day. But he went the route of going by himself. This way is extremely lucky. This is winning the lottery time and time again. It's almost impossible. That's why so many people look at this and they say he used bots, he used something that it just doesn't make sense how he became so successful, because it is so ridiculously hard to replicate what he did without doing anything. It's almost impossible to do without laying a finger in marketing, which is what he claims that he did. So the better routes is 2048, maybe another game that everyone in this room probably recognizes. I think it was the most played game in 2013. 2048 was really popular on the web. It's a direct copy of the game called Threes. And Threes is a great game. It's a paid game, so not easily as downloadable, not easily as accessible. And 2048 was a free game. And Ketchapp, the studio, basically took 2048 from the web and put it on iOS. And since it was already blowing up at the time on the web, everyone downloaded it on iOS, and it blew up on iOS. And 2048, like I said, was the most played game of, I think, 2013. And it had so many downloads that this company now built its own publisher studio. So Ketchapp, which is the one company that I strive to be, and I look at and I'm like, this is exactly who I'd want to be. This is who I want to replicate. They took this one game, this one success, millions of their downloads, and they said, okay, now when we release new games, we're going to cross-promote our game. So they use this idea of cross-promotion, which just means that, let's say 2048, they release a new game called Jump Hero, and they place an ad in the start of 2048. So when you open up 2048, you see download QB Hero, or not QB Hero, sorry, I wish that was it, but download Jump Hero for free, and all this traffic gets detoured to go to Jump Hero. And they use that concept to start building this profile where they have like 20 games now. And so once they got up to 20 games, they would release a game and they would cross promote through all of those other games. So within 20 games, there would be something in the front of that app that says, go download our new game for free. And all the traffic from that would be driven to their new game. So their 21st game would get hundreds of thousands of downloads, fly up in the App Store, and be one of these top games, top apps in the App Store. And they didn't even spend any money on marketing, because all they did was access their own user base. It's incredible what they've been able to do. They have probably over 50 games now, and if you go through arcade games on the App Store, you can probably go like every 5 or every 10, you'll see a Ketchapp game, because no matter what, if you were to release a game with them, you're going to be a top app. You're most likely going to get at least 1 million downloads. And so the way this works is, let's say I go to them, I would build a game for them. They only really release one touch, one tap type games. So maybe I go to BuildBox, I build a BuildBox game, which is a very one tap type of game. And then I go to Ketchapp, I say, look, this game's going to be great for you. It's going to fit your publisher profile. If they like it, they'll make a deal with me and they'll say, okay, yeah, we have 35 games lined up for this year so far. You're going to be the 36th game. And they'll give me 30% of the revenue and 70%. Usually I think it's around 50-50 if you go with a publisher. Ketchapp is so good that they take 70 of it. And it's because you know that you're going to make bank if you go and you work with Ketchapp. So I could go to them, I could give them my app, and then they would just release it. They'd cross-promote it. They wouldn't really spend any cents, any money on marketing, and I would have a successful game, and they would have a successful game. And Ketchapp uses this model now, and it works to a charm. It is amazing. Granted, they got featured by Apple 100 times, but with that being said, they can use themselves. They use features, whatever they're able to use without actually marketing. They're able to make this crazy successful platform. And this is where I really think most people should head. If you're making a mobile game, it's really hard to start up on your own and rebuild what Ketchapp has done. But if you got a deal, like even if I was like a decent publisher and I was like, oh yeah, I'll go 50-50 with you, and whatnot, but I was still way under Ketchapp, and someone told me, oh, well, I could publish with Ketchapp, I would 100% tell them, go publish with Ketchapp. You're insane if you publish with me and not Ketchapp, because they can get you 1 million downloads and they can get you thousands and thousands of dollars with ease. And the thing about them, I guess that's a little bit different from a regular publisher, is, like I said, they only focus on cross promotion, really. Whereas this new game that's come out, Color Switch, I don't know if anyone's heard of it. Has anyone played this game in here? Raise a hands. Anyone played this? It's been the #1 app for Well, it's not right now, but it was #1 app for I think 30 days. I talked to the person who actually made this game. He made it in Buildbox, and this has over 30 million downloads in 2 months. And he's going around talking to everyone like, look, it's all about game design. Like everything's about game design. Yes, that's true. You need to have a good game to be in the App Store, to be in the top of the App Store and stay in the top of the App Store. But it's not just about game design. The reason that this game is successful is because he partnered with someone called Fortify. And Fortify is a Facebook public figure that had 6 million followers. And he published the game for the guy. I think they probably went 50-50. I'm not sure about it. But this guy figured out what was going on inside the App Store, when to advertise at the right times, how often to advertise. And he used his own account, his 6-7 million follower account, to make Color Switch a #1 app. And it has stayed there for so long now. The main thing about this is that it has stayed there because it is a good game. And that's one of the things about making a game, is that it won't stay in the top charts for very long if it isn't good. You have to have something that, like, you can drive a campaign to get thousands of downloads and get to the top of the App Store, but it's not going to stay there unless it's good. Color Switch, it's a universal appeal. Anyone could download it and play it from anywhere around the world, and it's being pushed out constantly. But I watched his whole entire campaign. He advertised a ridiculous amount in the beginning, and now he only has to advertise like once a day, twice a day to keep it at a #1 spot, because it is a good game. With that being said, this is just another option for a publisher type deal, and this is what people are doing right now. So you could publish with someone like a social media account or something like that, because this guy, he knew what he was doing, and he used his social media power to make this extremely successful. So there are multiple options out there, not to just release it under your own name and whatnot. You can release under other publishers, and there's publishers that, these are like the biggest guys that I'm talking about right now. But there are smaller people that you can publish with and get hundreds of thousands of downloads, and it'll go very well for you if you're making a game. So this leads me into marketing, and this is where marketing, the only way you're going to be successful in the App Store is if you research. It's the only thing that I did for so long, and it's where so many people fail. QB Hero is a niche game. It's football, and I planned everything about QB Hero around releases of preseason, regular season, playoffs, holiday season, about holiday season, and about the Super Bowl. And that's what just happened recently. But the people that I use, I would go on Vine, I'd go on Instagram, I'd go on Facebook. I would only target football accounts because I knew my audience. I knew who I wanted to hit. I wanted to hit a young audience age. I wanted to hit only football people. And so I advertised to those people, and the conversion rate was extremely high. We were able to drive tons of downloads, and we were able to do things with such minimal money compared to other people that it looks crazy to someone else. Because what most of these companies do is they spend money on marketing through these ad networks, and there's these major ad networks where they spend $2, $3, $5. Some people can get it down to 50 cents a dollar to just get an install. So let's say I wanted to drive 1 million installs, and for me, I'm Clash of Clans, so I'm a huge studio. For them, they'd probably pay $8, $10 per install. So I'd be paying, as a Supercell, Clash of Clans company, $10 million to drive 1 million installs, which is insane to any indie game developer because no one can pay that. But for them, they can easily pay that. For indie game developers, it's impossible to hit that. If I wanted to drive 10,000 downloads and I have to pay $10 per download, paying $100,000, I don't have that as an indie game developer. And so with QB Hero, because I hit a niche market, I hit the target audience that I knew about, instead of paying $1 or $2 per install, we paid about 3 cents per install. And it's because of how much research went into it, and how we really targeted specific accounts to use in social media that aligned with our game. And that's where people go wrong. They blindly advertise. They advertise all the time, and they waste so much money on marketing that it becomes useless, especially with just how the App Store works in general. And just touching on to that, you want to usually go for a boost in the App Store. So when you release a new app, you'll want to get a lot of downloads very quickly on the first day, first weekend or whatnot. So when we released QB Hero, I said 30,000 downloads in the first 2 days. We did that on purpose because we needed to get those downloads to make sure we were at the top of the charts, so that we could have a better chance of staying at the top of the charts. And I mean, that ties into something that I'll be going into a little bit later in this, which is organic growth. But touching on CPI, which is cost per install, there's this company that's perfect for indie game developers called TapDAC. I think it's called TapDAC. But they only advertise with one another. So I could sign up as an indie game developer, and anyone else in this room could sign up as an indie game developer, and we could just promote each other's games for free. So we aren't actually paying, we're just promoting our games and helping each other. And so they have this network where, you know, there's hundreds, thousands of developers that go on here, and instead of paying for installs, they just trade installs. And for them, it's way easier. For me, it'd be way easier because I don't have to pay anything. I can just trade with someone else, and if it works out well, you know, I would find other football games, other sports games for QB Hero, and then we'd have a high conversion rate for each other and be working out for each other, so we'd continuously use each other. And this is just, I mean, it's a great way. I mean, this is 0 CPI, so this is what, you know, you want to aim for. You don't have to pay for installing, you just trade for installing. And this is something I don't actually have in the game right now, but if I was to go back in time, I would have used TapDAC in the beginning because I wouldn't have to pay anything at all. And this is what I was talking about with organic growth. So organic growth is interesting, and it's really hard to predict in the App Store, but there are certain models that you can use for it. Organic growth really just means people coming to your app truly to come to your app for no other reason because they want to download it. So you're not actually paying for that install. So a lot of people, I've heard things like 50%, 100%, 150%, depending on the game. And with QB Hero, we got around 100% organic growth. So if we got 30,000 downloads in those 2 days, I would expect 30,000 downloads within another time period soon after, whether that be like a month or two, but it's still a lot of downloads that I didn't pay for myself. It's just sharing. And there's ways to maximize this in your game. So when I first released QB Hero, there was almost nothing in the game that made it so that you would organically share it with someone else. There's nothing in there about Facebook, about Twitter, about Instagram at all that made you really want to show it, other than if you wanted to just show your friend, look, beat my score in QB Hero. Like I said, that type of thing with Flappy Bird, it's really hard to replicate unless you're at your, you know, top 10, top 5 app in the App Store. So you need to have things in there to really push your app besides just planning on the fact that people are going to go word of mouth. You want to hope your game is good enough that it will go word of mouth, but you need to have things like buttons where QB Hero, there's now, if you get a new high score, a button will pop up and it'll say share on Facebook, and you can get 5, 20 gems, and those gems will allow you to buy a new helmet. So people, even though they might not be organically sharing it per se, you know, they aren't sharing it because they want to show it to people. They'll post a link or something on Facebook or Twitter, and they'll get gems for it. They'll get a new helmet for it, but they also just shared it to their entire database of friends. So on Twitter, you know, this is what I watch. I watch clicks, and I see how often it's happening, and I'll see, you know, hundreds of clicks a day because people are just sharing it on their Facebook and Twitter accounts. And I can see, you know, okay, this is how much it's growing organically just through the clicks on Facebook and Twitter. So you can push and you can make organic growth happen a lot quicker. The best way to do it is to have a boost campaign, though, which is what I was just talking about before. You want to get as high up in the App Store as possible, because the most organic growth you will ever see is when you're at the top of the App Store. And that's just fact. The QB Hero, we got to the top charts. We were 143. That's out of 145 in the overall top apps of the USA. And that means that you had to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the list. So it really didn't do much for us. We were a number 5 sports game, number 4 sports game. That helped a little bit for anyone that went to go just download sports. But in general, you want to aim for top 25 apps. And to get the top 25 apps, people think that it costs, you know, $50,000 to $100,000 dollars to get to top 25, top 10 apps. It costs a lot of money. And that's because people pay so much money because they don't really focus on learning what's happening behind the scenes. They focus more on just trying to drive downloads for $2 and just hope that it goes well, instead of really studying how to make it happen. So if you can, like with QB Hero, it would only cost about $5,000 to get me into the top 10 apps on the App Store. And that's because I was able to study enough what was happening, what my CPI was, to make sure that I'm able to get to that spot in the App Store. And that's where I've just been playing around with, is just how much money does it take to get to certain positions. But it differs for every single game that you work with. If you do get into a top 10 app position, it's the golden spot, because people will go on the App Store and they will just scroll down a little bit, they see your app and they download it because it's a top 10 app. So you've hit a position where your organic growth is way over your paid growth, and you're able to minimize the amount that you're paying on marketing and just allow the App Store itself to take over. So how do you actually make money with apps? Probably the most common question I ever get asked. Actually, I probably get asked the most questions about ad networks. How do you make money with ads in apps? If anyone is familiar with making money with ads, there's a common terminology of just things like click-through rate, eCPM. In general, there's tons of ad networks that you can use. CTR is something that just means how often people are clicking ads. eCPM means how much money you're expected to make off of how many impressions you're showing, so how often those ads are showing in your game. There's a ton of ad networks, and I guess the base overview of this is that there are companies that you can use to mediate ad networks. So with QB Hero, we use something or a company called MoPub, and we mediated these ad networks. So for example, we had at one point InMobi, AdMob, AdColony, iAd, Chartboost, all in the game at one time. And the way that it mediates it is it's like almost like a live bidding, in that let's say that there's 5 ad networks, and one ad network is willing to pay $5 to have that ad in your game, and another ad network is willing to pay 4, one's willing to pay 6. Whatever's willing to pay the highest will go into your game at that time. So they try to maximize the amount that the people are paying, so that the companies that are mediating are making more money, and then the companies that are showing those ads, like QB Hero and other game companies, are able to make the most money as well. So HeyZap, which is what you see in the middle, this is this new startup company. Well, not startup, but they just got bought out actually by a bigger company. And they're a mediation company where you just take one SDK, throw it into your app, and then you're able to just write which of these ad networks you want in your game. So you could just turn on iAd, turn on Chartboost, turn on AppLovin, and then you can play around with it to see, okay, this ad network's performing the best. This ad network isn't performing well at all. I'm going to drop it. So you can really figure out, okay, which ad networks do I want to keep in my game, and then which ad networks do I want to get rid of. The numbers that I mentioned earlier, eCPM and whatnot, eCPM is that's usually how you're basing which ad networks are performing the best. So for Chartboost, let's say I get an eCPM of $10, which is pretty high, but for like a full screen ad, if someone clicked on that ad, I get a certain amount of money for that. And what eCPM means is it's how much money you make per 1,000 ads in your game. So if I had 100,000 ads in my game and I made $1 eCPM, I would make $100 off of that. So if I had 1,000,000 ads, I would make $10 off of that, which I don't know if I did that math correct right there, but anyway, that's the general gist of it. And you want to maximize eCPM because you want to make the most money for yourself. And the way you maximize eCPM is mediating through all of these ad networks and figuring out which ones are performing the best for you. This is something that we've actually struggled with pretty heavily in QB Hero because I haven't had as many ad networks in it, because I was using MoPub, and MoPub you had to basically update your game and put in more SDKs every single time. So it got really frustrating to add in other ad networks because we just had to update the game all the time, and it wasn't a good decision to update it as often as we were going to because of the ad networks. So HeyZap, you can just do it online, so it's a lot easier to do. The other way that you make money, this isn't really making money, but to make sure you're making money, is just watching analytics. And this is what I try to focus on. There's websites called App Annie, Sensor Tower, I forget the names of other ones right now, but you can go onto these websites and you can check how well your app is doing. And then those are like seeing the top charts, but there's also Google Analytics, Flurry Analytics, Fabric Analytics, Crash Analytics from Fabric. There's so many different analytical things that you can use to figure out how many downloads you're getting, like how often the game is crashing and whatnot. And then the main thing is figuring out the flow of what players are doing. So I can see, okay, a player clicked this in the game. They clicked the play button. They clicked the game mode button. And then they clicked the store button after they lost the game 5 times. They went to go buy this helmet. I can see how often they're buying that helmet, or which helmet's the most popular. And then I can figure out how much money they're spending on those helmets. And I can try to use those analytics to make it so I can make more money from the game. So it's just taking advantage of all these analytics that you have or that you can access to maximize the revenue stream that you're getting from games. Last is in-app purchases. It's probably what you see on top of ads. It's the most common thing. It's just buying certain things in the game. So in QB Hero, you can buy helmets. Well, you can't buy helmets directly. You can buy gems to buy helmets. You can remove ads, probably something that everyone here has seen, like remove ads for $1. And there are ways, like I said before, to maximize this through analytics, because you can check how often people are doing what, and then you can go and you can make more money off of those in-app purchases, or maybe you can add in more in-app purchases. So with user engagement, the most important thing with a game is keeping them in the game. QB Hero is okay with it. The retention rate is all right. It depends on if it's organic retention rate or if it's a paid or retention rate, because the paid usually is a little bit worse than the organic. Organic people are more likely to stay in the game, and that's okay, but you want to make sure that organic is going well. The main thing, and this is what I said before, to keep people in the game is the social aspect of the game, social sharing. You want people to actually share it with other people. So you want them to use things like Facebook, Instagram, and Vine to share it to their friends, even messaging and other things. But to keep them in the game, there needs to be things in there to make them want to play with friends. One of the biggest things, one of the things that I'm trying to do right now is make a multiplayer game, because what better than social aspect than to have someone playing with someone else? And that way, I mean, I don't know if anyone here has played Fun Run, but Fun Run was really popular. I still play it sometimes, but really popular probably in high school for me. So maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. And you just played with friends. I remember playing it like during exam season. They actually had a marketing push during exam season, which is extremely smart because everyone was studying for exams. Everyone played multiplayer games with each other during that time to not study for exams. And Fun Run and all these other games they've done a really good job with multiplayer games. I think it's a really good way to go with just social aspect, because that is social aspect right there. You're playing with each other. The other thing that I actually was just talking to someone about this on the phone yesterday. I had a long phone call with someone that's well known in the app marketplace and has his own publisher studio. And he was talking about how push notifications really changed his retention rate. So push notifications in general is just you're adding in, it might take 15 minutes to add in software to put push notifications in your game, but then you're able to send out push notifications to everyone that accepts it. So if there's 150,000 downloads of QB Hero, I don't have push notifications in there right now. I'm getting screwed over at the moment because I can't push out something that says, hey, come back to my game, come back and play it right now. So I'm losing users, I'm losing retention rate because I'm not able to push these notifications to them. And what he showed me was he had a video where he had like 15 or 16 users at the time on Google Analytics. He could see where they were in the world. And then he pushed one notification. And right after he pushed that notification, it went up to like 100 and 200 people playing the game. So he was able to boost the retention rate of people playing the game because he was able to push out these notifications to people. It's definitely a great thing to put into a game and a necessary thing to put into a game. It's one of those things where if I went back in time, I'd say, okay, I need push notifications from the start because I can raise my retention rate, which means that I'm basically marketing to my own users for free because I have a user base and I can make money off of that. So I'm losing money right now by not having push notifications in the game. One of the last things is maintaining your game, and one of the most important things is updating it often. I mentioned earlier not to update games often, at least for QB Hero, because what happens when you update is, let's say, right now we have 94 reviews in the App Store, 4.5-star review, looks really good. If you were to go in the App Store right now and you saw QB Hero organically, you saw it had 4.5 stars with 94 reviews, and you look through it, you would sort of trust it, and you would download that game because it looks like it's a good game. When I update a game, you lose all of the reviews. They move to the next section, which is called all versions instead of new version, and now it's just 0 reviews. So it blanks out on the App Store. The algorithm of the App Store understands that you have a higher rating, so it'll still place you a little bit higher, and you'll be a little bit more visual to people. But when people find you, they don't know that you're a good game because most people don't understand that you have to go click on all versions to see all of the ratings. So it is important to update often. For us, I was trying to keep the ratings high because I didn't want to lose those visual ratings because I was still trying to drive certain marketing campaigns. If you're not worried about that, you want to continuously update because it's just another way to bring back your users. If I updated QB Hero every 2 weeks, then maybe I don't need push notifications as much because I'm able to bring my users back just from updating it. Oh, I put in new helmets. Oh, I put in more game modes. I put in more backgrounds, more things for people to unlock, maybe more challenges for people to play. And people are automatically just playing the game by themselves. And I didn't have to market. I didn't have to spend any money. They're coming back because I just updated it, which is a fairly easy thing to do depending on how drastic the update is. But I think it's very important to continuously update your games to make sure that you're holding those users. App Store optimization is something that's talked about in the mobile game and app realm a lot. This is where I focus a lot of my efforts into, and this is honestly something that probably needs like 3 or 4 shell talks alone. It's a gigantic subject. It has a lot of basics to it, I'm not going to go into extreme detail about it. The basics are you can do things like change your keywords, change your icons, change your screenshots, how many ratings you're getting, the position you are in the store. Everything affects you optimizing your game in the App Store. And doing ASO or performing this, people have built very successful companies around purely doing ASO because a lot of people don't understand the complexity of ASO and don't want to do it themselves. But there's a lot that goes into it, and it's almost too much. I can answer questions if people have personal questions about it afterwards, but there's a lot of information about this. And the general idea is that you just need to make sure that you're optimizing the game, whether the looks of the game or the ratings of the game and whatnot, to be in a better spot in the App Store. Along with this comes the competitor analysis. And the competitor analysis is, these are what I'm talking about, those websites called App Annie and Sensor Tower. I go on there and I compare what's happening with QB Hero with other games. So I can look at the keywords of QB Hero. I can say, okay, QB, football, passer, touchdown, NFL, whatever the keywords I'm using, and I can compare that to the keywords of games like Madden or other really big football games, maybe a Michael Vick game or something like that, and I can see which ones are performing better than others and where I might be able to beat out other competitors in the same realm. So for me, it'd probably be a lot easier to trend or to use the keyword of something very complex, like maybe like touchdown hero, touchdown passer, or something like that, rather than a keyword like NFL. That's just going to bring up NFL Network, Madden Mobile, fantasy football, and everything like that. And so I have to look at this every single day because you have to continuously track your competitors and make sure that you're beating them out on the keywords that you have in your game. And then there's also just everything else, which is just going into their marketing of the game and figuring out how they're doing what they're doing with their game, which is what I focused on a lot in the beginning. This wraps up the shell talk. If anyone has any questions or anything like that, you can ask right now. But thank you guys all for listening. And yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to say it either. I've been looking into it a lot more right now. There's certain people that I'd buy from, there's certain people that I wouldn't. And like people are starting to make a business out of it now, and that they are actually making a business of selling their source codes. So like they might not think that they can ever make their game successful, but they'll make like 10 games in BuildBox. So there's one guy, for example, where he's made 10 games in BuildBox, which probably took him maybe like a few days each to make. The graphics maybe took longer, and then he just puts them on there and tries selling hundreds of copies of them because he can make a lot more money doing that than going the marketing route because he doesn't really know what he's doing. And there's certain people like them that make businesses out of it, which are the people that I would probably buy from myself because I know that their games are at least of higher quality. There's these other games like the Flappy Bird clones and whatnot I wouldn't even bother with because usually what happens with source code apps is they try to copy what's popular at the time. So you'll go into the source code website and then you'll just see games that like were popular a few weeks ago and people try to buy into them so that they can replicate what they did. And it works, but you have to have a lot of money to market it yourself to make it work. So if you don't have that money, it's not going to be worth it for you. There are some gems, I guess. There's some hidden gems, and you have to find them in the source code marketplace and buy it. And I've been thinking about it. I'm actually talking to someone right now about the source codes that he has because he has his own company based around it. I couldn't actually rebuild QB Hero in BuildBox because of the limitations of BuildBox. So, and that's where I downloaded BuildBox in January and just played around with it and looked at it from a developer's perspective. And the first thing I looked at was how many limitations does this thing have? Like, what can I not do? I couldn't build, I mean, maybe in some very complex way I could build QB Hero. And another one of the programs like Game Salad, I probably could have made QB Hero very quickly. And if I was, I mean, I still wouldn't have, but it's very easy to make games with those types of things. BuildBox Color Switch, which is I think number 3, number 4 app right now, was built in BuildBox, and it took the guy 48 hours to build it. Yeah, so excuse me, it's incredible how quickly you're able to build. And BuildBox is, I mean, he's going around right now saying, oh, BuildBox this, BuildBox that. BuildBox is incredible because it made me, make this incredible game. The main thing behind it is the marketing. And that's what I'm saying. You have to really understand what's going on behind the marketing to make it actually happen. It's not just you buy a game and you throw it out there, because it'll never be successful if you do that. I only use social media. Most people use like the ad networks that you saw up there, like Chartboost and everything. Those ad networks are ad networks for people that pay for installs. So most indie game developers, like there's an indie game developer marketplace on Chartboost that you can go on and make deals with other people. And so like I could go on and make deals with like someone like you if you had a mobile game, and then we could just, you know, have direct deals with each other, show ads in each other's games. Very similar to TapDeck in the sense that you're like sort of trading installs, but that's what most people use, and that's where most people are wrong. Because social media, you can drop your price by so much. You drop the cost that you have, because you're able to get so many downloads as long as you figure out which accounts fit the mold of your game that you have.
There are a couple of things that can happen when people stop using an app. They can either delete it off their phone, or they can just leave it there, lying around. How accurately can you measure retention rate, and does it differ between the two?
It's hard to say with deleting apps in general. Retention rate is something that it's actually tracked from the analytical websites that you use. So it'll literally give you a percentage of retention rate every single day. So I can go on QB Hero and I can see my first day after the game is downloaded, I have a 65% retention rate, which is good. People are coming back the next day. If you look at it after 7 days down the road, there's like a 10, 14% retention rate. So not as many people are playing the game after or 7 days after they downloaded it, but it'll give you numerical values of that retention rate. Deleting apps is tricky because I don't know if there's an actual tracking thing that says, oh, they deleted your app. The main thing that you can tell is how many users are coming back to it. So you can only use percentages to figure out, okay, this is how many users that I have, but it's really hard to gauge the amount of people getting rid of it.
And with a lot of mobile apps, they go through these cycles where they're really, really popular.
Right.
And then, let's say a month later, no one even remembers them. How viable is a business that focuses only on a single app? How long can you go with something?
It'll depend on the app and the way that you're marketing the app. Because so for QB Hero, for example, let's say that I only marketed with the same amount of people that I had right now. They have, let's say, 10 million followers in total on social media. That will at some point saturate. And at some point, it's not going to work as well. And that's what happens with every marketing campaign. It just doesn't work as well anymore because you're not hitting the same amount of users that you were hitting before. I would say that it is probably only a month, couple months, but you can keep it alive for longer the higher up you get it in the store. And that's why I'm so focused on that, because if I did for Super Bowl time, we got into the top charts, but if QB Hero was a #1 app or the #1 app or a top 5 app, that means you don't have to scroll at all. And by seeing that, there would have been a lot more downloads, and it would have stayed up there by itself because of how many downloads it was getting just because of Super Bowl timing. And that way it's able to maintain itself without me actually marketing that much. So my marketing isn't saturating. So then maybe a couple weeks from then it starts to go down. I'm able to market again afterwards and keep it back up there through the marketing power, through the money that I got from just organic downloads. That's why it's really tricky, because it depends on the game. And I get asked that question a good amount, because you do, like, Color Switch isn't going to last forever. Color Switch is up there right now. It has over 30 million downloads. It's not going to be a top app forever though. And that's just fact. And there are trends in the app store, and sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't, but probably a couple month period is the most you would see from being like, very top. With that being said, have you ever heard of Geometry Dash? Geometry Dash has been a top game as in like in the top charts overall for a couple years now, I think. And it's a great game, but it's been able to maintain that position just because it's such a good game, and it has like 150,000 5-star reviews, which is just absolutely insane. And having that many reviews keeps them higher up in the store. So if they were to market again, they'd be able to jump in the store just like that, because they don't have to really try that much, because the App Store algorithm is like, oh, okay, they have 150,000 5-star reviews. Let's keep them up here. People like the game. So it's a lot easier for them to market than QB Hero that only has 300 reviews. And for them, they're able to stay in that position for longer and continuously drive downloads from that position. So it does depend on the game, and it depends on the complexity. Flappy Bird would never last long. Color Switch would never last too long. They have a really good push right now, but I guess the more complex the game, the more social aspect it has, the longer that it'll stay. Geometry Dash, you can build maps for other people. So like you can play with friends and build a map for them. There's like a map marketplace. Clash of Clans, you're playing against players around the world. So you're way more likely to stay up there because so many people are playing. Plus, they have a lot of money. So they're able to market for a very long time.
Have you ever thought about going to catch up with QB Hero?
It wouldn't fit their publisher profile. So they're very selective. And a lot of these guys are. Even if I went to a company that was only sports games, they'd probably look at it and they'd say, you need to do this, 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 this to make it so that it's going to be better for our publisher profile. And I'm talking to someone right now who wanted to publish QB Hero under their own game, and they had their own studio. They had a really successful game, and they're in the sports realm. But even then, they're like, no, make the game a dog game where you're throwing a frisbee to the dog, because it has a more universal appeal. It's QB Hero, it's not sports. Super Bowl is over. It's not sports season anymore, football season anymore. So you want to be able to hit as many people as you possibly can. And with QB Hero, it's really hard. And they were most worried about the fact that, you either have to wait months for football to come back. And even then, football is only America. And that's what Flappy Bird, Color Switch 2048, they were so successful because they're all universal. It's anyone can download it, anyone can play it. Doesn't matter what language or anything like that. You can just hop on and play. I don't think there's, numbers, 2048, Flappy Bird, you're flying a bird, Color Switch, colors. So there's nothing in there that's preventing anyone from downloading it. QB Hero, if you're a basketball player, it's preventing you from downloading it because maybe you only like basketball. And yeah, America. So it's only America, really.
How long took you to learn this?
It took me a few months. So switching over from Objective-C to Swift, and there wasn't many tutorials out there, but it took a few months to learn, and then I still wasn't even ready to start building, but everyone told me, the best way to learn is just build, because you're going to have to look up things. So that's when I started building QB Hero, and that's when I learned the most, is through the summer. So it probably took me a few months to really get the basics of it, and then through the summer it took me 2 months to really get it down and understand it fully. And even then, I still don't know as much as I should know. What was that? 2015. Yeah. It was last summer, 2015. So I started learning Swift in December. I started looking at Swift in December, and I started really learning it in March. And then that's when I learned it pretty intensely for like 2 months. And then in May, June is when I picked it up, and that's when I took it on full time. So that's exactly what I was talking about. Trump Dump is a game where it's Flappy Bird, the bird version. Instead of flapping up, it flies up, and you flap down. And instead of the numbers going up every time you pass the pipes, the numbers go down. So the first level starts with just one. And you fly up, go through the pipe, and then after you go through the pipe, you take a bird poop on Donald Trump. And that's why it became so incredibly popular, because I think they did have a marketing push. Because when I looked at the data, it looked like they had a marketing push to it. But that took right on to the trend of Trump and everything going on with Trump. And if you look through the ratings of it, it's just a lot of talk of either people love Trump or they hate Trump. People download the game just to see it and see what's happening. Like, I downloaded the game myself out of pure curiosity as to what was happening with the dump on Trump. So yeah, people can do it. I think they did have a marketing push though. So there's a game right now called Bernie Sandwiches, which is based on the meme of Bernie eating sandwiches, and it's actually really popular right now. And what's nice about taking advantage of current events is that you don't have to market as much. So they put a little bit into marketing, but then it maintains itself a lot better, because if they did get into a top 10 position, people would just look at it and say, oh, this is really funny, I'm going to download it. So yeah, it's you want to take advantage of those times, but I don't know if I've ever seen a time where it was purely organic, no marketing at all. It's just that if you do put some marketing in, it's a lot easier to maintain it.
So another question: how viable is just following trends that take place to broad spectrum things in the App Store and designing
It's viable. It's probably pretty viable, but you have to have good money. Because you have to have a lot of money. Because if you do it correctly, you can make a lot of money off of it, and you can make it so that the cash flow for your marketing will work, and you'll be able to keep it there because, yeah, you're following the trends of what's going on in the now, but you still need to have a decent amount of money to get it to the position that you need it in. And a lot of times it's hard to find those niche audiences that you're looking for the bigger trending games. So like if there's a universal trend of something, it's going to be a lot harder to find an account that fits a universal need, because there really isn't a universal account like that or universal things like that. So you're probably spending a decent amount of money on marketing doing that. It probably would work though fairly well. And I think that's what, I mean, this is what the guy that made Bernie sandwiches is trying to take advantage of right now, because he knew that there was a trend and he's trying to do that, and he's going to do it with another game, with another trend later in the season. And with QB Hero, I did the same thing, followed the trend for football season. So it does work.
Is there any legacy with mobile games like for PlayStations and Xbox and stuff? There've always been those iconic games that people always remember, look back to, like let's say, like you just said, Halo,
Right.
Last of Us, stuff like that. Does that happen often in the mobile industry? Because I can't imagine anything retaining someone's attention for that long.
It's difficult. And that's where these big players come in. And that's where Supercell, for example, Clash of Clans is a game that is going to maintain itself, but they're also $1 million, probably $1 billion company. And they have the capital to continuously spend money to make their game seem like that. And Clash of Clans has been around for a couple years now and has been extremely successful. The same goes with Game of War and, like I said, Geometry Dash. And there are other games up there. Trivia Crack was really big at one time, and they have been able to maintain that position, because once you get a lot of users, you're able to keep the popularity up for a very long time. But you need to have something very unique about your game. Geometry Dash is extremely unique. Clash of Clans, it really is like a tower defense game, but they did it in the right way, and they've been able to hold that, and now they're known. Clash of Clans is that iconic. That's probably one of those games I look at as like, this is an iconic game that took over the App Store. But other than that, there's not many of them. So I guess that's probably the best way to say it, is you don't see it that often. There's like whales that dominate the market. It's really hard for indie game developers to battle with them. So, any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you. We'll be around for a few more minutes if you have more personal questions. Otherwise, have a good night. Come back. Future talks. Yeah. Enjoy.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.